Stop for a second before you reach into your pockets. If a security guard stops you and says, empty your pockets, here is the exact sentence that protects you almost every time. You can calmly say, I do not consent to a search, but I am happy to speak with your manager. That is it. That is the whole tool. Now let me show you why those specific words matter and what to do next depending on how the guard responds. If you have ever felt your heart start pounding the moment those words were said, even though you had done absolutely nothing wrong, you are not alone and you are not overreacting. Being asked to empty your pockets in public taps into a very old, very deep instinct to comply immediately just to make the moment end. That instinct is normal, but this is a very different situation than a simple receipt check at the door, and it deserves a different, more careful response. Let us walk through exactly why and exactly what to do at each step. Here is what is actually happening legally when a security guard asks you to empty your pockets. In the vast majority of everyday situations, a private security guard, meaning someone who works for the store and is not a sworn police officer, cannot legally search you or your pockets without your permission. Consumer attorneys who handle these situations say this is one of the most misunderstood moments in retail security because the request is almost always delivered with total confidence, as if it were an order rather than a request for your consent. Asking someone to empty their own pockets is technically a request for a voluntary search, even though it rarely sounds like a request in the moment. This is why the specific wording of that sentence matters so much. Saying, I do not consent to a search, does two important things at once. It clearly states your position without any aggression in your tone, and it creates a clear record in case this situation is ever discussed later that whatever happens next was not done with your permission. Adding, I am happy to speak with your manager, keeps the door open for a calm resolution rather than making the moment feel like a confrontation. Here is the bad way this plays out. A shopper is stopped and asked to empty their pockets, panics, and immediately complies without saying a word, turning out their pockets in front of other shoppers, feeling humiliated the entire time, even when nothing at all is found. The moment ends, but the shopper carries the sting of it for the rest of the day. Here is the good way. The shopper is stopped, takes a breath, and calmly says, I do not consent to a search, but I am happy to speak with your manager. Then the shopper waits calmly for the guard's response, rather than reaching into their pockets automatically out of habit or panic. Now here is what typically happens next, because this is the part that matters most. In many cases, simply and calmly stating that you do not consent is enough for the guard to back off, since most stores train their security staff to avoid situations that could turn into a legal problem for the company. If the guard accepts this and lets you continue on your way, the moment is over and you have handled it exactly right. But if the guard insists, blocks your path, or says you cannot leave until you comply, the situation has shifted, and attorneys who handle these cases say your next question should be calm and direct. Am I being detained or am I free to go? This single question forces clarity. A store generally needs a specific, reasonable basis to actually detain someone, typically some direct observation suggesting an item was taken and not paid for, not simply a general policy or a hunch. If the guard cannot articulate a clear reason, this question alone often resolves the situation. If the guard says you are being detained, the safest path forward is to stay calm, avoid any physical resistance, and continue to state clearly that you do not consent to a search while waiting for police or a manager to arrive if that is what the store decides to do. This is the part attorneys are most consistent about. Being legally correct and staying physically safe are two separate priorities, and safety always comes first. Never physically resist or attempt to push past a guard, even if you are confident you are in the right, because a calm verbal stance protects you legally in a way that a physical struggle never will. It is worth understanding why store security sometimes escalates to this point at all. Most of the time, this happens because of a genuine observation, a sensor alarm that went off, an item that appeared to go unpaid for on camera, or a specific report from another employee. It is rarely random. Knowing this can help the moment feel less personal, even though it still feels uncomfortable in the moment it is happening. This is not about assuming every stop is unjustified. It is about knowing that even when a stop is justified, you still are not required to consent to a physical search of your body or your pockets by store security. There is an important distinction worth understanding here as well. The difference between showing the contents of a bag and emptying your own pockets. Many stores do have a general policy, sometimes posted, that bags may be checked upon request as a condition of shopping there. Emptying your own pockets is a different and more personal request, and consumer attorneys note that courts have generally treated a search of your person, meaning your body and your clothing, with significantly more protection than a request to see the contents of a shopping bag you are voluntarily carrying. If you are shopping with a spouse, a friend, or grandchildren when this happens, the same calm approach applies to the whole group. If a guard asks everyone in your party to empty their pockets, each person can calmly state the same thing individually. I do not consent to a search, but I am happy to speak with your manager. Rather than the group collectively panicking and complying all at once simply because it feels faster in the moment. If you are watching this from Europe, the underlying principle holds in most countries as well. Private security personnel generally cannot conduct a physical search without your consent, and the same calm, clear statement tends to work just as effectively, though the specific escalation procedures and what a store can legally do if you decline can vary somewhat by country. It is also worth saying plainly that saying this sentence out loud gets easier every time you practice it, even just quietly to yourself. The first time may feel unfamiliar, almost like rehearsing something before a difficult phone call. By the second or third time you actually need it, if you ever do, it becomes far more automatic, said in a calm, even voice rather than a shaky or defensive one. A calm tone alone changes how the entire interaction unfolds from the very first word. It is worth briefly addressing a common worry directly, because it comes up often. Some people wonder whether calmly declining a search could somehow make them look more suspicious in the moment, as if refusing draws more attention than simply complying. Attorneys who handle these situations consistently say the opposite tends to be true. A calm, clearly stated decline, delivered evenly and without hesitation, generally reads as confident, not guilty. It is actually the panicked overcompliance, the shaking hands, the rushed apologizing, that tends to draw more attention and create more confusion for everyone involved, not a short, steady sentence followed by a calm request to speak with a manager. There is also a practical reason this calm approach tends to work so well, beyond the legal principle behind it. Most store security guards are trained specifically to avoid situations that could create liability for the company they work for. A calm, clearly stated refusal that references speaking with a manager is often exactly the kind of response that prompts a guard to step back and let a manager handle the situation instead. Precisely because most guards do not want to be the one responsible for an improper search that later becomes a complaint or a legal issue for the store. Think about how rarely this actually happens across a normal year of shopping, and how much of the fear around it comes from simply never having a plan in place for the moment it does. Most shoppers will go years without ever being stopped this way, but having one calm, ready sentence removes almost all of the panic from the rare moment it does happen. The same way, knowing where the emergency exits are in a building removes panic without ever expecting to need them. 3 things to hold on to for the next time this happens. First, remember that in almost every everyday situation, a store security guard cannot legally search you or your pockets without your permission, even though the request rarely sounds optional. Second, the sentence to use is simple. I do not consent to a search, but I am happy to speak with your manager, said calmly rather than defensively. Third, if the guard insists or blocks your path afterward, calmly ask whether you are being detained or free to go, and prioritize staying physically calm and safe over winning the moment on the spot. This exact scene plays out in stores across the country regularly, and it is almost never explained clearly to the person standing there being asked to turn out their pockets in front of strangers. This is not about assuming every security guard is acting improperly. Many are simply following a store policy or reacting to a genuine alert, often without fully understanding the legal limits of what they are allowed to ask for. It is about making sure that a stressful, embarrassing moment never turns into something worse simply because nobody knew there was a calm, clear way to respond. If this helped you feel a little more prepared, consider subscribing because this channel exists to walk through exactly these kinds of everyday moments so you always know what to say before you need it. This video is for general education only and is not personalized legal advice for your specific situation. And if you found this useful, you will also want to watch the earlier video on what to do when security says you are banned for life, because it covers a closely related moment where staying calm and knowing the right question to ask matters just as much.